Allison's 7-year-old came home and saw a huge sold sign at the house. Allison's mother told her that she is now homeless and should wait at the gate. She waited for 4 hours in the snow. When Allison found out, she just said, "Okay." 16 hours later, her parents received a call and started screaming. Allison didn't know any of that when she turned onto her street. All she knew was that her flight had landed late, her phone was on 2%, and she wanted nothing more than to get home, shower, and crawl into her own bed before her body realized how tired it actually was. She'd been gone for 5 days. Long meetings, polite dinners, the kind of travel where everyone keeps saying great conversation while checking their watch. She slowed as she approached the house, more out of habit than anything else. That's when she saw Piper. Piper was standing by the gate, not playing, not pacing, standing, still, like she'd been placed there and forgotten. For half a second, Allison's brain tried to make it normal. Maybe Piper was waiting for someone. Maybe she'd just stepped outside. Maybe. Then Allison saw the way Piper's shoulders were hunched, how her arms were locked tight against her sides. She saw the way Piper didn't move when Allison's car stopped, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to. Allison got out of the car. "Piper!" Piper turned her head slowly, like it took effort. Her face was pale, her lips tinged blue in a way that made Allison's stomach drop. Snow clung to the knees of her pants. Her eyelashes were wet, either from melting flakes or crying. It was hard to tell. "Mom," Piper said. It wasn't relief. It was a question. Allison crossed the distance in 3 steps and crouched in front of her, hands already on Piper's arms, checking without thinking. Cold. Too cold. Not just winter cold. Outside too long cold. "Hey," Allison said, keeping her voice even because Piper needed even. "Hey, I'm here." Piper nodded once like she was confirming data. Then she leaned into Allison, stiff at first, then all at once. Her body shook, not sobbing, shivering. "How long have you been out here?" Allison asked. Piper shrugged. "A while." That answer told Allison everything. Allison wrapped her coat around Piper's shoulders, pulled her closer. Her eyes flicked past Piper, to the front yard. That's when she saw it. The sign. Huge. White post. Red letters. Impossible to miss. Sold. It looked festive, like a celebration. Allison stared at it for a second too long. Her brain didn't want to accept it. It kept trying to reframe it. Maybe it was for the neighbor's house. Maybe someone put it there by mistake. It was very clearly in Allison's yard. "Piper," Allison said. "Can you tell me what happened?" Piper swallowed. "Dad brought me." That made sense. Cole had Piper this week. They'd planned it that way because of Allison's trip. He always dropped Piper off here when his time ended. He never stayed long. Conflict made him itch. "He dropped me off like normal," Piper said. "He waved and drove away." Allison nodded, like she was taking notes. "And then?" "I knocked," Piper said. "I knocked a lot." Allison's jaw tightened. "Grandma opened the door a little, not all the way." "What did she say?" Piper looked down at her boots. "She said the house was sold." Allison waited. "She said I'm homeless," Piper said quietly, "and that I should wait at the gate." Something hot and sharp went through Allison's chest, then settled into a very calm, very dangerous place. "Did she let you inside at all?" Piper shook her head. "She said I don't live here anymore." "And you waited?" Piper nodded again. "She said it would be better if I waited." Allison stood up slowly and took Piper's hand, turning them toward the house. The front door wasn't locked. That detail mattered. Allison didn't know why yet, but it did. Allison walked inside. The house smelled wrong. Cardboard, tape, cleaning spray. That strange hollow smell rooms get when they're being emptied. Boxes lined the hallway, some sealed, some half-packed. Allison's name was written on one in thick black marker, Piper's on another. Allison felt something go very still inside her. Mom came out of the kitchen first. She looked composed, annoyed even. Like Allison had come home early and thrown off her schedule. Dad hovered behind her, holding a roll of packing tape. Allison's sister Taryn sat at the dining table, scrolling on her phone, legs crossed, humming under her breath like this was a minor inconvenience. "You're back," Mom said. "Yes," Allison said. "I live here." Mom's eyes flicked to Piper. "She's inside now. That's good." "You left her outside," Allison said. "She had a coat." Allison looked at the boxes, the stripped walls, the empty space where Piper's drawings usually hung. "What is going on?" Allison asked. Dad cleared his throat. "We sold the house." The words didn't land right away. They hovered, waiting for permission. "You did what?" "We sold it," Mom said, slower, patient, like she was explaining something obvious. "You refused to listen. You wouldn't help, so we handled it." Taryn finally looked up. "It's for the family." Allison let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. "You sold my house," Allison said. "You are not on the deed." Dad straightened. "We had a power of attorney." Allison stared at him. "For emergencies, for Piper, not for selling my property." Mom waved a hand. "Details. You didn't need a house this big anyway. You travel. You're divorced. Taryn needs help." Taryn smiled, thin and satisfied. "You could always rent." Allison looked down at Piper. Piper's face was buried against Allison's shoulder, fingers twisted into Allison's sweater like she was afraid Allison might disappear. "You told my child she was homeless," Allison said. Mom shrugged. "It's not untrue. You made her stand outside in the snow. She needed to understand the situation." Something in Allison finally snapped into place. Allison had been shocked, confused, for a moment even tempted to argue. But this wasn't an argument. It was a declaration, and declarations only go one way. "Okay," Allison said. Mom blinked. "Excuse me?" "Okay," Allison repeated. Allison didn't explain. She didn't ask questions. She didn't tell them what she was about to do. Allison turned and walked out. Behind her, Mom's voice rose. "Allison, you can't just—" Allison closed the door. Outside, the cold hit Allison's face like a slap. She kept a firm hand on Piper's shoulder and walked her to the car, buckling her in with hands that were steady now. Steady in the way you get when the decision has already been made. Piper looked at Allison, eyes wide. "Are we really homeless?" "No," Allison said. "We're not." Allison started the engine. In the rearview mirror, Allison saw Mom standing in the doorway, arms crossed, absolutely certain she'd won. 16 hours later, Allison's parents received a call and started screaming. Allison used to think betrayal announced itself. A raised voice, a slammed door, something cinematic. Turns out, it mostly sounded like normal conversation, just repeated long enough that you stop hearing the warning underneath. After they left the house that night, after Piper finally fell asleep somewhere warm with her coat still on because she didn't trust the heat yet, Allison kept replaying the same question in her head. How did it get this far? The answer was uncomfortable, which is usually how you know it's the right one. It didn't start with a sold sign. It didn't start with snow. It didn't even start with money. It started with Allison being reasonable. Allison was divorced. That wasn't a dramatic sentence. It was just a fact. Cole and Allison had figured out a schedule that mostly worked. Piper spent time with him. Allison traveled for work sometimes. And on paper, everything looked stable. People loved saying things like, "At least you're civil," as if that's a prize you win instead of the bare minimum. Allison's job paid well. Not private jet well, but I don't panic at the grocery store well. It also meant she traveled. Conferences, meetings, the kind of trips where you pretend hotel coffee is fine because complaining won't fix it. About a year ago, Allison's parents called with that tone. You know the one. Not quite desperate, not quite casual. Carefully balanced guilt. They were having a rough patch. Just for a bit. Just needed a place to land. Just one bed. Just until things stabilized. Allison said yes. She told herself it was temporary. She told herself she could handle it. She told herself that family helped family, and that saying no would make her the villain in a story she didn't want to star in. At first, it was fine. Awkward, but fine. They stayed in the guest room. They thanked her. They talked about their plans to move out like they were real plans and not bedtime stories. Then weeks turned into months, and the word temporary quietly packed its bags and left. They started rearranging things, small stuff at first, moving dishes, commenting on Allison's grocery choices, asking why Allison did things the hard way. Dad started fixing things Allison hadn't asked him to touch. Mom started saying, "our house," without catching herself. Allison noticed. She just didn't do anything about it. Piper noticed too, though she didn't have words for it. Piper lived in the same house, but not quite with them. They weren't cruel. That would have been easier. Cruelty leaves marks you can point to. This was colder. Polite smiles, short patience, help offered like a favor that would be remembered later. They'd watch Piper if Allison asked. They'd pick Piper up from school if there was an emergency. But it always came with a sigh, a reminder of how busy they were, how much they were doing for Allison. Piper stopped asking them for things on her own. She stopped running to the door when they came home. She learned, at 7, that love sometimes has conditions you don't get to negotiate. At the same time, Allison's sister Taryn became the main event. Taryn getting married was treated like a national holiday. Every conversation circled back to it. The venue, the dress, the house she and her fiancé deserved, the life she was finally starting, and the grandchildren, not the one already sitting at the table quietly coloring. The future ones, the hypothetical ones, the ones that counted. Piper would be there, crayons spread out, while Mom talked about how excited she was to finally be a grandmother. Allison noticed. Allison still didn't say anything. Then the money talk started. It always began softly, suggestions dressed as concern. You don't really need a house that big, Allison. You're gone so much. You could always rent. Your sister is just starting out. Eventually, it got less subtle. Refinance. Take out a loan, sell and downsize. Help your sister. Help the family. Allison said no, not loudly, not dramatically, just no. Allison said she wasn't selling her house. Allison said she wasn't taking on debt, so someone else could play homeowner. Allison said Taryn was an adult and would figure it out like the rest of them had. That was the moment things shifted. The house didn't feel the same after that. Conversation stopped when Allison walked into the room. Doors closed more often. Taryn stopped pretending to like Allison. Mom started using words like selfish. Dad talked about sacrifice. They both talked like Allison's stability was a resource they were entitled to redistribute. And still, Allison stayed calm. Still, she told herself it would pass. Part of that calm came from trust. Or what Allison thought was trust. Because, yes, there was paperwork. When you're a single parent who travels, you make contingency plans. Allison had given her parents limited power of attorney, narrow, specific, the kind meant for emergencies, school forms, medical decisions if Allison was unreachable, things like that. Not money, not property, not her house. Allison knew that. She was very clear about that. She didn't imagine they would see it differently. Now, looking back, Allison could see the arrogance building. The way they talked about handling things. The way they spoke as if authority came from age, not ink on paper. What Allison couldn't see yet, what she couldn't see then, was the exact moment they decided the rules didn't apply to them. All Allison knew, sitting in a hotel room later that night with Piper asleep and her phone buzzing uselessly in her pocket, was that they had done something they believed they were allowed to do. And they had believed it strongly enough to leave a child outside in the snow. That's the part that kept replaying. Not the sold sign, not the boxes, not even the word homeless. The certainty. The way Mom said it like a fact, not a cruelty. Like gravity. Like weather. Like something Piper should have accepted quietly. That certainty was what scared Allison. Because certainty doesn't apologize. Certainty doesn't back down. Certainty doesn't stop until it hits something harder. Allison didn't know yet what they had signed. She didn't know what they had shown anyone. She didn't know how far they'd gone or how sloppy they'd been. She just knew one thing with absolute clarity. Whatever they thought they'd done, they thought it was final. And people who think they've already won tend to be very loud right before they realize they haven't. They were already at the hotel when Allison's nervous system stopped pretending this was survivable on vibes alone. It was one of those places that tried to look cozy by putting a lamp in the corner and calling it a personality. Beige walls, beige carpet. A framed picture of something that might have been a flower if you squint hard enough. The kind of room where your thoughts echo because there's nothing else to do. Piper was asleep in the bed by the window. She'd kicked one sock off in the night, like her body still believed it was at home and safe enough to be messy. Her coat was folded at the foot of the bed, too neat. Not laundry neat, emergency neat. Allison sat in the other bed with her shoes still on because she couldn't shake the feeling that if she took them off, she'd lose momentum. And right now, momentum was the only thing holding her upright. Her phone buzzed. Allison didn't check it. Not because she was mature, because she was strategic. If she saw her mother's name on the screen, she would do something that would require a lawyer for a completely different reason. Allison stared at Piper for a minute. Her eyelashes, the faint pink line across her cheek from the pillow, the way she held her hands curled close to her chest like she was keeping warmth in. Then the question Allison had been skirting around all evening finally caught her by the collar. How long was Piper outside? Allison knew a while. She knew too long. She didn't know the number, and the number mattered. Allison slipped into the bathroom and closed the door softly. The mirror showed a woman who looked surprisingly normal for someone who had just learned her parents were capable of telling a 7-year-old she was homeless. Allison called Cole. He answered fast, like he'd been waiting for it. "Hey," Cole said. His voice was cautious, but not defensive. That was new. "Hi," Allison said. "What time did you drop Piper off today?" A beat. Allison could hear him thinking, not stalling. "About 2, he said. 2-ish. Why?" Allison did the math in her head. She got there a little after 6. Her throat tightened, but her voice didn't change. "Okay," Allison said. "So she was outside for 4 hours." "What?" Cole's voice jumped. "No, your mom opened the door." "I'm not asking what you saw," Allison said. "I'm asking what time you dropped her off." He exhaled sharply. "Around 2, I swear." "Okay," Allison repeated. Silence stretched. Then, quieter. "Allison, I didn't leave her with a stranger. I left her with your mom. She was at the door." "I know," Allison said. And she did. She wasn't calling to make Cole the villain. He was a lot of things. Avoidant, allergic to conflict, the human version of "I don't want to get involved." But he wasn't psychic. He didn't know her mother would turn a normal handoff into a survival experiment. "I'm not blaming you," Allison said, "because he needed to hear it and because it was true. I just needed the time." Another exhale. "Okay." "You saw Mom open the door," Allison said. "Did Piper look okay when she got out of your car?" "Yeah," he said immediately. "She was fine, bundled up. She waved at me." Allison swallowed hard. "Did Mom say anything?" "No," Cole said. "She barely looked at me, which honestly felt like a win." Allison almost laughed. It came out like air. "Same," she said. He hesitated. Is she okay now?" "She's asleep," Allison said. "She ate. She's warm." "Thank God," Cole said. And for once it didn't sound like a phrase. It sounded like a feeling. "Cole," Allison said, and she kept it calm. "If anyone contacts you about this, my parents, Taryn, do not engage. Just tell me." "I won't talk to them," he said. I'm not stepping in that." Smartest thing he'd ever said. "Okay," Allison said. "Thanks." They hung up. Allison stood in that bathroom for a moment, palms flat on the sink, letting the number sit heavy in her chest. 4 hours. Then she went back into the room, checked Piper again, and finally took her shoes off like a person trying to pass for human. In the morning, Piper woke up hungry. That mattered. When kids stop being hungry, something's wrong. "I want waffles," Piper announced, like she was making an executive decision on behalf of the whole family. "Of course you do," Allison said. "This place charges $8 for bottled water. They can afford waffles." Piper smiled, small but real. They ate in the hotel breakfast area, surrounded by other people, pretending they weren't also in temporary lives. Allison let Piper drown her waffles in syrup because Allison wasn't interested in being the health police today. Today, she was the stability police. Back upstairs, Allison put cartoons on for Piper and handed her the remote like it was a sacred object. "Stay here," Allison said. "I'm making a couple calls." "Are you calling Grandma?" Piper asked. "No," Allison said. "I'm calling adults who don't think a gate is childcare." Piper didn't fully understand, but she nodded like she liked the sound. Allison stepped into the hallway for the first call. She called the non-emergency line and reported what happened, cleanly, factually, without dramatics. Her daughter was 7. She was denied entry to her home. She was told she was homeless. She was left outside in snow for approximately 4 hours. The woman on the phone went quiet, then asked for details in a careful voice. Address, names, times. Allison gave her Cole's drop-off time and her arrival time. The number landed with more weight when she said it out loud. The woman gave Allison a case number and told her an officer might follow up. "Thank you," Allison said. When she hung up, her hands were still steady. It wasn't catharsis. It was documentation. Allison went back inside. Piper was on the bed, watching cartoons like her brain had decided it would rather live in an animated universe where problems get solved in 11 minutes. "Did you do the call?" Piper asked. "Yep," Allison said. "Grown-up paperwork call." Piper thought about that. "Are we still homeless?" "No," Allison said. "We're just temporarily paying for a room with a flower painting." Piper looked at the wall. "That's not a flower." "That's what makes it art," Allison said. Piper giggled once, and Allison held on to that sound like it was a receipt proving they still existed. Then Allison made the next call. A colleague had sent her a lawyer's name with the kind of message that tells you it's serious. Call him. He moves fast. They did a Zoom consult because speed mattered more than ambiance. He looked like someone who owned multiple suits and had never once smiled by accident. "Allison," he said, "tell me what happened. Short version." Allison gave him the short version. He didn't gasp, didn't do sympathy face, didn't say, "I'm so sorry." He just started sorting facts like they were files. "Do you own the house?" he asked. "Yes," Allison said. "Sole owner." "Did you sign anything authorizing a sale?" he asked. "No." "Are your parents on the deed?" he asked. "No." He nodded once. "Then the sale is either not real, not finished, or not lawful, possibly all three." Allison told him about the limited power of attorney. He asked, "Does it include real estate transactions?" "No," Allison said. "It was for emergencies and Piper-related stuff, not property." "Good," he said. "Then we treat anything involving a sale as suspect until proven otherwise." Allison watched Piper in the background, legs swinging as she ate cereal from a cup like a tiny raccoon. "What happens now?" Allison asked. "I'm going to identify the transaction," he said. "If a sold sign is up, there's a realtor and an escrow or title file. I'll contact them and put them on notice that the owner disputes authorization. That typically triggers an immediate hold." "Typically," Allison repeated. He gave the smallest possible shrug. "People get very cautious when the word fraud gets anywhere near their paperwork." "Paper has a way of ruining confidence," Allison said. His mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but an acknowledgement that Allison was at least functional. "Do not contact your parents about this," he said. "Do not threaten. Do not warn. Let them be surprised." "Finally," Allison said, "a plan that matches my personality." He told her what he needed from her, basic proof of identity, ownership info he could pull from public records, and said he'd start immediately. When the call ended, nothing had changed in the room, but something had changed in the air. Because now the situation had left the family ecosystem and entered the adult world, where people don't care who your mother is. They care what you can prove. Allison put her phone down and tried to breathe. She didn't have to wait long. Mid-afternoon, her phone started vibrating. Dad called, Mom called, Taryn called, over and over. Allison didn't answer. A voicemail came in from Dad first. His voice sounded strained, too high. "Allison, we just got a call. They said the file is frozen. They're asking questions. This is ridiculous." Frozen. A second voicemail followed, Mom this time, furious in that clipped way she used when she was trying to sound in control and failing. "They're accusing us," she hissed. "You need to fix this, immediately." Then a text from Taryn. "What did you do?" Allison stared at the screen. She didn't know who had called them yet. She didn't know what exactly had been said, but she knew this. Someone official had just told her parents no, and it had hit them like a car crash. Piper looked over. "Mom?" "Yeah, baby." "Are they yelling?" Allison exhaled slowly. "They're upset." "Why?" "Because they thought they could do whatever they wanted. Because they thought rules were for other people. Because they thought a 7-year-old was an acceptable casualty." But Allison didn't say any of that. "Because they don't like being told stop," Allison said instead. Piper nodded once, like that made perfect sense. That night, Piper fell asleep without her coat folded like a shield at the foot of the bed. Allison watched her for a minute in the dim hotel light, then turned her phone off completely. Allison didn't need to hear them scream. She already knew what it meant. They had started the day certain, and they were ending it afraid. Allison met the lawyer 3 days later, not because she wanted to wait, because this is how long it took for paperwork to catch up with audacity. His office was quiet and aggressively normal. No leather chairs, no dramatic city view. Just a desk, a printer humming in the background, and a man who looked like he'd seen this exact situation enough times to be tired of it. He didn't ask how she was. Good lawyers don't. He opened a folder and said, "Here's what happened." Thank you. A sentence with an object. Your parents listed the house with a realtor, he said. An offer came in. They accepted it. That's when the sold sign went up. So it wasn't actually sold, Allison said. No, he said. It was under contract. That's not ownership transfer. That happens at closing. Good. Words with definitions. They were already doing better. When I contacted the title company handling the transaction, he continued, I told them two things. First, that you are the sole owner of the property, and second, that you deny authorizing any sale. And that's when they called my parents, Allison said. Yes, he said, because from their perspective, something was very wrong. He flipped the folder toward her. Inside were copies of emails, clean and boring and devastating. Title ran ownership, he said. Your name came up, sole owner, no co-owners, no exceptions. That alone stops a transaction until it's explained. So they asked for the explanation, Allison said. They did, he said. They asked your parents to prove they had authority to sell a house they don't own. Allison leaned back. And they couldn't. They tried, he said. That's the problem. He slid another document across the desk. Allison recognized it instantly. Her name, her signature, and a scope she had never agreed to. This, he said, is the power of attorney they submitted. Allison read it once, then again. Authority to sell real estate, authority to transfer ownership. That's not what I signed, Allison said. I know, he said. The original POA you described doesn't include this language. This version does. So they added it. Yes. After the fact. Yes. Allison stared at the paper, oddly calm. So, when escrow called them, they weren't just told, we need clarification. They were told, this looks wrong. He nodded. Exactly. The moment you disputed authorization, and they produced a document that expanded their authority beyond what you granted, the transaction triggered a fraud review. And that's why they started screaming. Yes, he said, because they realized professionals were now looking at what they did. Allison laughed once, quietly. My parents have never reacted well to supervision. He closed the folder. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a material alteration of a legal document. That's forgery. There it was, plain, unceremonious, final. What happens now? Allison asked. We separate the issues, he said. You already reported the endangerment of your child. That was correct. This is different. He explained it without theatrics. A separate fraud report, prepared and submitted through his office. Notices sent formally. The power of attorney revoked in writing. The transaction terminated. And my parents? Allison asked. They are no longer treated as decision makers, he said. By anyone. Allison signed what needed signing. Revocation, confirmation, dates, initials, all the things that look boring until you need them. When Allison stood to leave, he said, One more thing. Your parents are still in the house. Yes, Allison said. That's a problem. He nodded. I can formally revoke their permission to stay and issue a notice to vacate. If they don't leave, enforcement follows. Do it, Allison said. Once that's done, he added, your daughter shouldn't return until the house is clear. She won't, Allison said. He nodded again. That's the right order. They did not leave voluntarily. Of course they didn't. Allison's mother called first, furious and wounded in equal measure. Dad followed with apologies that didn't include responsibility. Taryn sent messages that suggested she believed volume could reverse reality. Allison didn't respond. Blocking people is not immature. It's efficient. The notice to vacate expired. Enforcement was scheduled. Allison didn't bring Piper. Piper stayed with a friend, safe and distracted, unaware that her grandparents were about to experience consequences for the first time. Allison parked down the street and watched. The deputy knocked, explained, waited. Allison's mother argued. Dad hovered. Taryn appeared, crying loudly enough to be heard from the sidewalk. None of it mattered. When they were finally escorted out, Allison's mother spotted her and made a beeline like she still believed proximity was power. "I hope you're proud," she said. Allison considered it. "I'm relieved," she said. "Pride can come later." The deputy closed the door behind them and handed Allison the keys. "It's secured," he said. Allison nodded. "Thank you." Allison brought Piper home that evening. Piper stood in the doorway, looking around like the house might argue back. "They're gone?" Piper asked. "Yes," Allison said. "They're gone." Piper took off her shoes and placed them by the door, slowly, carefully, like she was reclaiming something. That night, Piper slept through without waking once. Allison stood in the hallway and listened to the house settle. There were still reports in motion, still fallout coming, still people somewhere who thought this had happened to them. But the house was quiet, and her child was safe. If they ever try again, Allison won't explain. She'll just let the paperwork do what it does best. Say no. 6 months later, the paperwork finished what Allison started. Allison's parents were charged with forgery and child endangerment, probation, heavy fines, mandatory classes they still swear were unnecessary. Allison was sure the judge appreciated their feedback. They don't speak anymore. No calls, no updates, no family meetings. Silence turned out to be very efficient. Piper is thriving, sleeping through the night, laughing easily, calling their house home without hesitation. As for Allison, she sleeps just fine. So tell us, did she go too far or not far enough? Let us know in the comments and subscribe for more.